Okay, and last but not least, this is your last video. Um, I want to go over the second part of the writing prompt. We talked already about the first part, which was the reflection. Now we're going to talk about the using narrative plot elements section. Now, in your project for Unit 2, I mentioned in Lesson 6, you're going to do the brainstorm. Well, in Lesson 7, you're going to work on the plot, and in Lesson 8, you're going to work on the setting, and in Lesson 9, the characters. So let's talk about all of those things for a minute. When in the prompt it says use narrative plot elements such as rising action, climax, and so on, and include at least one distinct setting and multiple characters. Okay, so let's talk about that element first. I put a plot chart on the screen which hopefully looks familiar to you. My daughter, who's a fourth grader, just started bringing these home because they're working on identifying those narrative elements of plot. So you hopefully recognize that plot chart. If you don't, familiarize yourself with it a little bit. Now, I've labeled it for you, so you can see that we have here the introduction, the inciting incident, the rising action, the climax, the falling action, and then the resolution. So all of those are what we call narrative plot elements. The plot drives your story, as does your conflict. So without a plot, you have nothing to watch. Nothing makes any sense. So the introduction is where you're going to introduce your setting and your characters, which are down here. We'll talk about them a little bit more in a minute. But your introduction to your story is going to be the introduction at least to your main character and where your story is taking place. Your inciting incident, which is this one here, is the thing that kicks off the plot. This is the first major event in your story. So you're going to start there, and then you're going to have what we call rising action. And these are events that move the plot forward and upwards towards the climax. So I put some stair steps here because plot elements in rising action build on top of each other to reach the climax. So you're going to step on, each incident up to the climax. So in a shorter memoir like this, you might have 3 incidents or 3 plot points of rising action to get to your climax. Or you might have 2 plot points of rising action, but you definitely have some rising action. Your climax up here is where we're going to have the turning point of the story or the most exciting moment in the story. For my example reflection that I gave you, this would be the moment I backed the car through the fence. Like the bang, the noise, the sound of the lumber falling and hitting the ground. That would be the climax in my story because that's where you're like, oh. And then all the falling action, this is more like a slide because it happens quicker than the rising action. So that's why I put the straight line there. It's going to go straight down to our resolution. So the falling action is, events that build towards the resolution that allow us to move from the most exciting moment to reaching that resolution of our conflict. So you, in your story, need to make sure you're including these narrative plot elements. If you don't include these plot elements, then you're not telling a narrative, which is part of the prompt is to be telling the narrative. So in Lesson 7, you are asked to begin plotting out or brainstorming those elements of plot. So you can just make little plot points like my introduction is going to be this, my inciting incident is going to be this. You don't need to describe them at that point, but you are laying them out in an outline format. All right, so the next part it says is a distinct setting. So the setting, as we can see down here at the bottom, the setting is the where. Where does your story take place? Is it in just one room in your house? Is it at the park? For me, a majority of my setting would probably have been in my driveway and in my car, mom's car. So the setting doesn't necessarily have to move from place to place, but it needs to be distinct. You need to be able to identify, your reader needs to be able to identify exactly where the story is taking place. You want to be able to describe what it looks like, what it smells like, what it sounds like, and we did some practice with that in our Unit 1 project with descriptive details. Secondly, you need to include multiple characters. I would go with at least 3 characters. So you need to think of an event that happened that includes at least 3 characters. Now, I know that some of you guys are thinking about writing about adopting animals and how the animals have impacted your life. And absolutely, the dog can be a character. I have no problem with it being a non-human character. That's totally fine with me, as long as the dog plays or cat or guinea pig or rabbit or giraffe or whatever the animal is, plays a prominent role in your story, because it needs to be a character that you can work with and develop in the story. You are writing from the first person limited perspective, point of view, which we talked about in the last video. You're writing from the I perspective. Remember, this happened to you. Only you can tell this story. So you're using the I section. The really cool thing about memoir writing is that you can be a little bit looser with your writing voice. It doesn't need to be so formal. You can let a lot of your character and personality shine through, which is my favorite part of memoir writing. So definitely let that through as you write. You're including description and details that will help bring to life your setting and characters. So here is where you're going to focus those details and that description. For setting, you really want to focus on, perhaps some sensory imagery, which is using the senses. Think about those five senses. What do you see? What do you smell? What do you hear? What do you touch? What do you feel? Include those in the story. It's way more interesting to hear what things sound like and look like than it is to just be told. All right, so those are the things you're working on this week in your brainstorm for Unit 2. Remember, Unit 3 is the actual writing of the project, so please don't write the project, the essay, and submit it in Unit 2, because you will not get credit for it. You are writing the actual essay in Unit 3. If you need help with any element of this project, or you aren't clear on any of the things I've gone over today in the asynchronous session, please contact me and let me know. I'd be happy to work with you on brainstorming, whether it's just the ideas you need help with or the building of the plot. I can help you with that too. All right. Go out, make a difference in somebody's life today. Be kind, smile a lot, and enjoy the rest of your day.